Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. If you enjoyed our disagreeing about the Green Bay Packers, hold on to your butts because we have another very difficult team to come up with fair numbers for, and that is the Detroit Lions, your reigning champions of the NFC North at long last. This is now the Lions division. And we are all living in a Man Campbell world. We are all Man Campbell stands. And honestly, Man Campbell probably should have been in the Super Bowl last year, considering how outstanding he had his team prepared to go into San Francisco and get a win as a huge dog in the NFC Championship game. Ultimately, his defense could not stop the immortal Brock Purdy and ultimately succumbed to the Niners in that contest. But boy, oh boy, was it a rousing success in any way you can measure it for the Detroit Lions in 2023. And the question now is fair to ask, can they repeat where they are effectively running back last year's team for better or worse at almost every position outside of some small investments made in the secondary? What say you, Andy?
Dan Campbell, Patrick, to answer your question, did have a shirt that said salty. Dan Campbell has said the first meaning is obvious because it has two meanings. He wants his team to play that way with a real hard edge. The second is less apparent. He wants guys to be salt of the earth. It's important for him as he tries to keep his team grounded after last year's success. I did love his presser because it was the most macabre fucking thing to say after they lost and they had a lead. It's
going to be tough for us to ever get back here.
Yeah. When he said, I told these guys they might never get back here. It's like, Jesus, buddy. I bet you're a hoot at funerals. You gotta calm down with this. But in the end, it's like, you know what? That's the attitude you should have. You should be like, it's hard. I mean, the biggest quote that stuck with me from all those early, I don't know if it was an NFL Films Presents thing, but there was a Marino thing where he said that, he made the Super Bowl very early in his career. And he just assumed, well, this is a good team. I'm a good quarterback. We're getting it. I'm going to do this a bunch. I'll get my win. And then it obviously didn't happen. There was a bunch of really good teams as well. Everyone's trying to get there. And if the Lions, the betting favorite would be the Lions never make it back to the Super Bowl, in the Dan Campbell era, because it's so fucking hard. There's only one team and there's some pretty good teams in the NFC. That said, they should be one of the favorites. They got to get past a few things. Like you said, that secondary was a pretty big disaster. We talked about that a little in the Packers preview because of that Thanksgiving game, I guess. My biggest takeaway is you said it again, kind of a boring offseason, but how in the world did they end up bringing back both coordinators? We just assumed they're losing. The over-under was 1.5, where you could – as far as coordinator, Glenn had 4 interviews. Johnson was gone. He was gone. It was him and McDonald were the biggest names. And then you're even with, I remember having to move it down because Belichick and Vrabel are on the market. Maybe Johnson's number 3 guy. And then Belichick, Vrabel, and Johnson. None of them are head coaches right now, which is pretty wild.
Amazing.
I guess, yeah. You bring back a really good play caller. You bring back the best offensive line in the league. Spoiler alert.
Continuity.
Big continuity. You did lose a guard, but you probably lateral move there. And then you paid some guys and you tried to fix your gaping hole of a secondary. I don't know that they did because there's a bunch of guys back there that are young and question marks and are already hurt for the entire season or cut from the team for, criminal charges. So it's been a tough rebuild back there. No team is perfect, but when you're going to give up the chunks that they did because they couldn't cover shit, even with, a really good job of drafting a high-end edge rusher who's absolutely worked out, was a one-man wrecking crew at times. This defense was hard to watch, and it put a lot of pressure on Goff, on Johnson, on the on the skill position group, on that offensive line to continue to put together really successful offensive drives over and over. There wasn't ever a respite towards the end of the season with some of these games. So it's going to be tough because I don't know that the secondary actually was going to be any better.
That's the sober hard truth. Yes, man, Campbell, successes are not given. Big motivational speaking guy, but I'll tell you what, it works. It flat out works. Like this team plays hard, and if you can get that, you kind of started with a head start in this league. And their season last year started with a bang, beating the Chiefs as huge dogs on opening night, banner night. They went into the champions stadium, and they said, "Nice banner, fuck off, we beat you." And it was lucky, right? Like it was a little bit of a couple fluky plays that really got him there, but they got there. Narrow win, and immediate success after the OT loss to Seattle, ripped off 4 in a row, playing great football against some meh teams in the Falcons, Panthers, and Bucs, surely. But that's what you got to do. You got to take care of business against the bad teams if you're going to be good. The problem then came when they went up against the Baltimore Ravens, and the Baltimore Ravens gave them a giant stamp that said, "You are not ready yet. You need lots of things to get better if you're going to contend." And that kind of soured me on really believing that the Lions were even going to be able to find success at the championship level come playoff time. And so I was like, against a bad team at home, I'll back the Lions, sure, but I'm not going to have anything to do with them in a championship game. And boy, was I wrong, because they learned their lessons. They got better. They continued to play great football. I think their loss to the Cowboys was another a really good sign of a team that was figuring things out, playing hard. That was a game on the road, end of the season. You're effectively fighting with the Cowboys for the 2 seed at that point, and you barely lost that game. That was referee assisted in a lot of ways, from what I remember, and ultimately, really hard fought game for the Lions, and just kind of clearly showed how they had developed, I thought, to that point in the season. And their win against the Rams in the playoffs was again kind of a very gritty win, a very gritty, hard fought win. No turnovers in that game was kind of the difference. I thought if they had 1 turnover, they likely lose. Huge stop at the end as you kind of capitalize on McVay not being an especially good in-game play manager. Game calling a game, especially aggressively. Whereas your aggressive play calling got you lots of wins throughout the balance of the season. Chargers win 41-38, in large part, I thought, was Dan Campbell going for it on 4th. The fact that you beat the Buccaneers by 8 and covered, I appreciated immensely.
That was
no round. This was just a team that was picking up on a lot of the small edges and was playing hard for their coach and was getting better every week, it felt like. And I don't know if we would have been as entertained in the Super Bowl as we were with San Francisco, Kansas City ultimately, but surely they would have been a worthy representative of the NFC. They played well enough in that game to win, and it just took a superhuman close from the Niners to get that. Was the big play of the championship game? Was there a fumble or something that I'm forgetting about? What was the big swinging high leverage moment of the NFC championship game? Do you remember?
I thought it was a pick.
Was it a pick or a failed conversion? There was a couple of specific plays with the big lead.
The Lions were up by, I think, San Francisco scored 34 points.
Yeah.
And they scored 27 of those after the halftime break. So late in Detroit just not being able to put it together on offense a couple times. But yeah, there was a turnover on downs.
A failed conversion.
It was 4th and 3 at the 30. You were up by 3. So the field goal puts you up by 6. And I don't think anybody in the world blamed or even thought why wouldn't Man Campbell go for this? It's 4th and 3 at the 30. That's just his MO. It's the right move for anybody, because at that point there was 7 minutes left. You can maybe ice off 3 or 4 more minutes and score a touchdown. Instead, you turn over on downs. Actually, you were down by 3 at that point. You could have tied it, but there was 7 minutes left. San Francisco rattles off a 70-yard drive anyway. You score again to go down by 3. you don't get the onside kick, and I think that's pretty much it. If they did do an onside kick there, I'm assuming they would. But the second half, these were the Lions' drives, were downs, where it was, again, 4th and 2 from the San Francisco 28 that they weren't able.
Yeah,
they fumbled on the first play.
Yeah.
And then punt after a nasty, gross 3-and-out, and then the turnover on downs that we just talked about. So just kind of a disaster class from the strength of your team and the offense. You convert one of those 4th downs, inside the opponent's 30, probably win the game.
Yeah, 4th and 2. There's still a lot of time left at the 28 with 7 minutes in the third quarter. But
the deep shot, off the helmet, the shot off the helmet that went for
jeez, that was crazy. That was what
I don't blame
life.
Campbell for going for either of those 4th downs.
I forgot about that.
Those are the right calls.
Yeah. They were absolutely right calls. That's your DNA. You don't change in those moments just because you have a trip to the Super Bowl in line. Like that's literally what's gotten McVay, and that's what's kept McVay from being a multiple Super Bowl champion, in my opinion. It's what's kept Shanahan from getting across the line, is the lack of aggressiveness in those key moments. So the fact that Campbell stuck with it, hopefully he doesn't change. I wouldn't expect him to change. It seems to be his MO. But yeah, this was last year was a success despite not getting to to a championship. Not getting to the Super Bowl, that is. You got to the NFC Championship. And I think, considering the fact that it didn't feel a year early for that by any stretch of the imagination. It felt right on schedule for the group of guys that you brought along. It definitely felt like a step forward in a progression that could lead to championship contender, right? I would say that they were the benefit for the last couple of years. Yeah.
Both 4th downs and the fumble, all 3 of those resulted in San Francisco touchdowns and then ensuing drives.
Yeah.
Like that just hurts even worse.
It hurts. It's bad. It
was a good team. What are you going to do?
Yeah. You can't give them multiple chances.
San Francisco's NFC Championship luck is about even over the last 2 years.
It is. It's even over the lifetime, because they've had some weird bad.
Who was the quarterback they put in 2 years ago when Purdy's elbow was just fucked? Josh Johnson,
I think. Yeah.
And eventually, it's like, is McCaffrey just playing? They did like
direct snap McCaffrey
Wildcat.
Yeah.
It was something.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I think by all accounts, like, it wasn't smoke and mirrors that you were good. A little bit of your rise to the top of the NFC in the last 2 years, I think, can be attributed to the NFC broadly being down. I don't think that's unfair.
Tart.
And now the NFC is up. There's a lot of good young teams, young quarterbacks, up and coming teams that you're gonna have to fight with. And Campbell was right. They might not get back. They might not have another chance. Like, there's just a lot of good teams. They might have to do it on the road this year. But you know what, Andy? I've seen enough. I've seen enough from the Lions and Campbell.
Crown them.
And this
crown their ass, crown them.
Not crown their ass, but like, if they have to do it on the road this year, I believe it. I'm not saying they will, but I'm not going to doubt it. Like, there's plenty of teams.
Getting the playoff experience was big for them too. If we're going to say that about Jordan Love, we have to say that about. I mean, of
course,
it's not as if Jared Goff has never played in a playoff game.
Of course.
But just the overall team, Dan Campbell as a coach, the coordinators, everybody getting that experience, definitely a huge positive. Keeping the coordinators, huge positive, and then keeping together this offensive line and the rest of the players that mattered. Probably, like, your losses were Josh Reynolds, CJGJ, Cam Sutton. I mean, Jonah Jackson is your biggest loss, and you backfill.
Replace him with Zaire, which is probably fine, if not an upgrade. I agree with that.
Yeah, so the losses aren't there for the most part.
I guess
you kept your coordinators, you kept your team. This should be just as good of a team as we saw at the peak of last year.
Yeah.
And so much comes down to the same thing we said with Green Bay. If we're going to say it for Green Bay, we're going to say it for Detroit. Is the Ben Johnson stuff going to continue to work the way it did?
Yeah. Here's what I got to ask you though. Mental exercise, because the guys in the chat are on my wavelength. Are there specific circumstances where you're off the Lions in the playoffs, right? Like on the road in Philly? Yeah, that's an interesting one. Like on the road in general, because of the the outgoing from a dome team to outdoors. Well, it didn't matter in San Francisco. And if you got to go to San Francisco again, like, are you live? 100% yes. If you got to go to Green Bay, are you live? Yeah, you play there in the winter all the time. The atmosphere in Philadelphia in a primetime playoff game is just different. Like, it's real rough. And if there's no weather and Goff is outside in Philly, I'm fine with it. But if there's weather and outdoors in the playoff game, that's when things start to get a little squirrely, because
it's a weird offense though. We don't talk about this enough, but like the way this offense is built, the way this team is built offensively, like your number one option is a possession slot guy. Your run game is all gap runs behind that maybe isn't even a result of very good running backs. Not that those guys are bad at football, but so much of it is just having, if you want to run that kind of scheme, you have to have the athletes on the front line. Like, that's why a lot of teams are like, hey, we're running an outside zone because we're just going to have to get our guy out there and use a tight end. And, this sort of blocking scheme, like the kind of offense they implement, and then just everything that Johnson does with, like we say, the forward facing, the modern NFL stuff, the motion, the subterfuge, like it doesn't feel like something that gets caught up on. That said, it's thin. Like, they're thin. They don't have depth at offensive line for much. They don't really have receivers that we love behind your number one tight end, number one wide receiver. So that there is a lot of thinness. I don't think if they underperform this year, it's going to be like, oh, we figured out Ben Johnson. It's going to be, hey, two offensive linemen missed a good chunk of time, and
our backup stunk.
Laporte is not. They figured it's so hard to just take away ARSB because of the position he plays. It's not, hey, there's a boundary corner that's going to take him away. You want to put your number one guy in the slot all the time? Have fun with that. Then these shittier backup wide receivers are actually probably going to get some separation on the outside. It is a kind of a tricky offense to play against. And again, because they run the ball so effectively, basically whenever, not just when they have a lead, they do have such a good run scheme. It's a hard offense to scheme against, yet it's kind of simple.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And I think ultimately, the questions about backing the Lions on the road in the playoffs, definitely environment is one of them. Temperature, weather, and to a degree, the crowds for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, as I look at this Lions team, I think there's not a lot of uncertainty. There's not a lot of like movable pieces in the ratings. Like, you kind of know what you have with a lot of parts, except for coverage, right? And I think that's kind of the key variable, where if this coverage is below league average, it's deja vu all over again. And if the coverage improves for whatever reason, then now we're talking about maybe a unit and a team overall that is competing for a 1 seed and is your clear favorite in the NFC North again. So that's kind of the key variable as I look at this roster. And I agree the offseason was very boring. There's really nobody of consequence that came or left. From what I can tell you, they take a risk on Marcus Davenport, who hasn't been able to stay healthy. So who the hell knows what you're getting there? They take a risk on Carlton Davis, whose best football may be behind him, but you needed somebody to come in to step forward. And you're taking a risk on starting a rookie cornerback in Terry and Arnold, who may be the next great player, but if you know anything about the history of first-round cornerbacks performing well in the NFL in year one, it's a sample of one. It's Sauce Gardner and no one else. Like, I honestly can't think of a single other rookie cornerback who was like, really setting the world on fire. So it's going to be tough for him. So ultimately, a lot of knowns on the offense, a lot of questions, and expected and hopeful improvement on the coverage side of things, and a tougher schedule, because now you got a first place schedule. You got to deal with the fact that you had success last year. There's a little bit more of a target on your back, certainly within your division. And so for those reasons, I think it's going to be tough to repeat. And, I'm I don't know that I've seen a ton of market support for these guys, right? Like, yeah, they're favored in the in the NFC North at just better than -101, but that doesn't exactly square with a team that won 12 games last year. I mean, their Pythag was closer to 10, so maybe
but
they got
it
a little
also
lucky.
it's a direct result of Green Bay being a very good team, a very good roster that is bringing back, pretty much running it back as well. That was a team that won a playoff game, a team that looked good, and you have a first place schedule. You should have won 2 playoff games. Yeah. You have a first place schedule, and as Patrick's pointed out, it isn't too bad, but it's still a first place schedule. So you got a first place schedule. You're playing as a million people have pointed out, this is a full Kershaw Stafford thing. Yeah, they're playing 14 of their games indoors. That kind of always happens, but yeah, the gap between Green Bay and Detroit is perilously close, and it wouldn't take very much for that gap to be flipped.
No, not at all.
One thing.
No. Just at the end of the season, it was not clear that there was margin between these two teams.
I think I'm starting with them being the better team, but it could probably flip several times during the year.
Yeah. If you just look at team tiers and you go week, I don't know, 9 on, I'm pretty sure Green Bay was better in both offense and defense. Maybe
it's funny we got a Rick Gaiman spoof account. My guy Noonan was sitting next to him at the golf tournament today.
Oh, nice. The Packers were better than the Lions from week 9 on, if you just look at
for sure.
The EPA per play offense and defense. So, all right. Well, let's rate these units, unless you had any kind of other macro thoughts you really wanted to bring to the table, because, I think, like I said, there's enough repeatable nature, there's enough signal that coaching and just in general the offense and the continuity on both of those things, that this is a high floor team. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So where are you at for
high floor?
GB?
6.
6. Ooh. I'm at 6.5. This feels mean. Okay.
I know Goff isn't asked to do a ton, but he does what he's asked, and he does a very good job of it. He is somewhere in the 10th to 14th best quarterback in the league. Okay. He's afforded a little bit of levity because he's afforded a lot because of his offensive line. It's fine. It's above average. It's just such a great spot for him with the, everything else. And I didn't want to double count the offensive line by giving him a better grade.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense to me. I'm at 6.5 for a lot of those same reasons, although I do think that Ben Johnson is an innovator. And here's my Ben Johnson thought.
Ben Johnson's doing more lifting than Goff for me here.
Yeah, same. Ben Johnson is an innovator because he has incorporated the best of the Shanahan-McVay stuff while not being from that tree. So he's had to learn it the hard way. He was not basically in the room hearing he's not just copying it. He's basically trying things out and figuring out what works for him in that mold, if that makes sense. And so I give him a little bit of an extra bump for that.
He's put together a good offense with what he has.
Truly.
It's hard to do with, I think, in probably 20 other teams, Goff is a bad quarterback. Not terrible, but he's below average. And, a lot of other teams, if you have this wide receiver room, which is very top heavy, things aren't going nearly as well. He's put together a very good scheme for what he has. And he should probably be gone next year.
Yeah.
Goff doesn't give you shit as far as a running quarterback.
No.
He's how many true pocket guys do we have left? Now that Rivers is gone, Ryan's gone, and some of those guys who were doing that well for 10, 15 years.
It's getting pretty low.
Goff that's kind of Goff. It's wild.
Prescott doesn't scramble very much.
He's also got a lower end body injury though too.
Carr doesn't scramble. What's his name? Who's your guy in Atlanta? Kirk Cousins doesn't scramble. Russell Wilson doesn't scramble anymore.
Yeah, I think I was waiting for you to get to. I think Cousins and Rodgers, but Rodgers is still more elusive.
Rodgers, yeah. Rodgers for sure.
Stafford's not a bad one. Purdy, I consider him more of a scrambler.
That's kind of it, though.
Yeah, it's few, and
Purdy and Mahomes have, and a bunch of these other guys have like elite know when to scramble.
They have that. Yeah, it's not like, hey, I'm deciding to run often, but when they do, it's great. Bryce Young just sucks at everything. I gotta put him in this conversation.
I don't really know how I feel about Burrow. Does Burrow do much for you in the athleticism department? Not really. But we didn't see him scramble much last year because he had the calf injury early in the preseason. So Stroud doesn't either, right? You're right. That's true. Okay.
Stroud didn't need to. It's wild. He did when he needed to, but it was infrequent. You're right.
Never needed to. Yeah.
All right.
Rating the skill position group for you landed where?
This was very tough. And this is a 7. This is a 7 that could become a 4.
Whoa. Talk me through that. So I'm at 7 too, but I did not actually think that there was a big low swing on this.
There's just no depth.
Just because it's thin. Okay.
So thin. You have two very good running backs that's doing some lifting.
Okay.
Part of that is scheme, but it doesn't matter because they're playing well within the scheme. And the fact that you have them both and you're using them helps the durability. Amon-Ra St. Brown, like we said, is being used in this sense where he's so good, but he's also just like your quarterback's best friend, being the slot guy, the possession guy who can do other stuff as well when he's needed. And then obviously Laporta is so good for, how long he's been in the league, which is, how many games did he miss? So he got 13, 14 games under his belt. And he's probably coming.
He played through the injuries.
I thought he missed a couple.
Did he? I thought he played through with the.
Maybe
I remember mentally being like, "Oh, he's going to miss some time." No, he started 14. He played all 17 games.
Okay, I mix up him and the Green Bay tight ends sometimes, but yeah, he did have. Looks like 1,100 snaps. God, yeah, I must be convoluting him with the Green Bay tight ends. They all had injuries.
Sam Laporta had an injury late-ish in the season to the tune of it seemed like he was going to miss time, and then he played through it. He could
improve as a run blocker, but that's not really his bag, guys.
The only game that he didn't have more than 70% of the snaps was the Minnesota game. That must have been the one he got hurt.
I'm trying to remember what exactly his injury was. Doesn't matter now, but he's elite already as a receiving tight end. Amon-Ra St. Brown is top 5 at worst. And Jameson Williams, I almost went back. If I'd had time, I said, you know what I need to do? I need to just go watch go find a JMO Alabama hype tape and watch like a 10-minute highlight tape. He's so good at times. And we just haven't seen that step forward. If you get that, then that's great. Having one more player who's that much better, but like Khalif Raymond's a better receiver than him, and that's not what you want. He's a returner, guys. So we need a lot more out of somebody. It needs to be Jameson Williams probably taking a big step forward. I don't know if we're gonna ever get like a Donovan Peoples-Jones renaissance. Some of the other names past that are,
pretty bad.
Pretty bad past that. So it is extremely top-heavy 7.
Okay.
Met a girl like that at the bar once.
Against
top-heavy 7.
Top-heavy 7.
That is a boob joke.
That's a boob joke. The locker room humor is amazing. Sam Laporta, January 7th, likely to miss time after suffering hyperextended knee and a bone bruise. Psych, he missed no time, but that was crazy. I forgot he played through that. He had a big old brace on.
Yeah, so I guess he has like 18 games under his belt.
Yeah, no more. 19. He played 3 games in the playoffs, so he's got 20.
Oh yeah, they played. Yeah, they didn't
play 3 games. So yeah, he was great.
He's a old vet.
Yeah. Yeah, he was available for the Rams. He was available for the Bucks, and he was available for the Niners. He got 11 targets for the Bucks and 13 targets against the Niners. Only 3 targets against the Rams. Okay. Although he had a huge touchdown in that Rams game. I remember that now. I am at a 7 for the skill group. Sorry, did you say you were at a 7 also?
Yes,
Or
I
you're
am.
a 6? Okay. I'm at a 7 for the skill group. I'm allocating almost all of the touches and targets to the basically 6 guys. Gibbs and Montgomery out of the backfield. Laporta is the tight end, has a huge share for me. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown is obviously a volume monster. I will say this about Jameson Williams. A lot of people have said this in the chat. You've said it specifically. He needs to take a step forward. He kind of did. He kind of took a step forward at the end of last year. And they were targeting him a lot down the stretch in some hugely important moments. Now, it wasn't always perfect.
His snap share was, especially in the playoffs, he played a bunch more. It wasn't so much more. Yeah, it wasn't so much rotating the other guys through for sure.
I have no idea why. I have no idea what the kind of, if they in-house felt like, okay, this is going to give us a new dimension that we need now. If they were saying that in-house, I give them a huge amount of credit, because that's what you should be thinking about that time of the year. How can we continue to get better and evolve and be different so that the game plans that we're facing aren't perfect kind of hand in glove for what we want to do? Yeah, he was a much higher usage guy in the playoffs than he was in the regular season for whatever reason. And I guess didn't play the first 3 weeks because he was still coming off of the ACL. Is that right? I don't even exactly remember his injury history, but it took him a really long time to get more than 50% of the snaps. And then once he did, it went up and up and up. His targets went up and up and up. And in fact, I thought,
I wonder about that too. He hasn't he's had the injuries, the injury right away coming in, and then he had a suspension so coming into the 2023 season, he was serving that suspension. He was one of the,
is that what it was?
Players.
Oh,
so
okay. Okay. It was a betting thing. Okay.
Yeah, he missed games because of a suspension. His rookie year, he missed games because he was still coming off the ACL injury. So this will be the first year he breaks camp as I'm your number 2 receiver. I went through. I know
what my role and responsibilities are. Yeah.
Yeah, playing game 1. So
that should be, if he doesn't make the leap this year, then it's not happening, I guess, is where we're at. Where are you for offensive line? How big is this number?
It's a 9.5. And I know there was some of my stuff. There's a little bit of leverage in here and some of these, but I went back and, it's hard because you need to be looking in season at this as well. We said, hey, let's compare this to the last 5 years. And, the worst offensive line in the league over the last 5 years certainly wasn't a week 1 line. It was probably a week 10 line where a bunch of replacements were in, if you go back and look at some of the worst performances. But, man, if you go look through the last 5 years, the next 3 best offensive lines that are even close to this are probably the Eagles a couple years ago with Mailata and, Prime Kelsey and who's your other tackle there? You have Dickerson, Lane Johnson. And then you got to go a full 5 years back for one that, you had the MVP season behind for Lamar with just
that was a great line.
Ronnie Stanley, Marshall Yanda, Orlando Brown, Skura was that was just so good.
Such a good line.
And then the third one is the 2023 Detroit Lions when they were fully healthy at times. So it's number 1 with a bullet right now because there's just no weakness because Zeitler had a 70+ grade, and he was not playing between Frank Ragnow and Penny Sewell. If anything, he could be your weak link coming in as I don't have continuity, and his reward for coming into a new team is playing between the number 1 center, and I don't know that that's even debatable, and probably the number 1 right tackle. I don't know if that's debatable. It is. You know what? They're number 1 center on your left side, number 1 right tackle on your right side. So the new guys coming in already had good grades. You have 2 of the top guys in the world at their spots. And then Decker is a top 10 tackle. That's crazy. Like he's probably 8th, 9th, 10th best tackle in the league. And he's the second best on his team. Glasnow is very good. He's a top guard. He can improve a little bit in pass pro, but I mean, they signed him. He's worked out pretty well for a guy that was kind of signed for depth. So the Jonah Jackson thing sucks, but outside of Ragnow being a health concern and the fact that I'm not going to say the names of anyone who plays second string,
because I don't know any of these guys.
They drafted Giovanni Manu in the 4th round. He has missed like 8 straight practices with some they're not saying what's wrong with him. They're saying it's some sort of health or illness that's keeping him out, and they're planning on moving forward without him in the short term. So they're losing even more depth that they did try to replace. You know, it's thin past that. Christian Mahogany. Maybe Mahogany was the one with the injury, or excuse me, the sickness. I think Giovanni is playing, but maybe injured. There were some younger players. It's either Mahogany or Giovanni, and I don't know that it matters one way or the other. It is Christian Mahogany has missed a bunch of practices. He hasn't been in camp for like a week and a half. And then, I mean, start looking at these other names. Michael Neese. Colby Sorsdahl.
Not good.
So it's a 9.5 but at the same time, if you lose one guy and you do have to backfill,
hey, you know what though?
It's 4 studs, and they've been
not the way the offensive line works though. So yeah, no. I mean, no, you're right. The way you're saying it is the way it works, which is that if you have 4 guys and you have good run blocking running back, and pass blocking running back, like you can replace one guy. Shouldn't be that big.
And Zeitler does fit in so well from what they did, because think about some of the offenses you've seen from Baltimore and how often they pull guys and have them running around the end. Like he's going to fit in well with this gap run. He's plenty used to getting outside and pulling and blocking down. So everything just kind of falls together. It's like this should be the best offensive line again.
I didn't really know how high to go. And I looked at the interior and kind of still have a little bit of eyebrows raised because of the age and some of the slippage on Ragnow. So I'm going 8.5 here, but I'm prepared to be corrected. And it doesn't change the fact that we came up with the same number for the Lions of 70.
It's funny. Like I said, I gave Mahomes a 9.5. I said I had to give this line a 9.5.
Okay. I'm at 8.5. It's still good. But I'm a little bit higher on QBOC. You're a little bit higher on O-line. We come to the same exact conclusion. Your run stop number for the defense is what? And by the way, just for context, this is the second best offense that we've talked about now after Philly. Does that feel right?
Better
than Buffalo?
Yeah.
Better than Houston?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Buffalo's kind of in the same boat with wide receiver issues, especially at depth.
There's more questions.
But they're worse. Yeah, they're worse at wide receiver for sure. The Detroit defensive line. Detroit, we got, they brought in Davenport in this offseason. They bought in DJ Reader. They have some good players in Aleem McNeil. Aiden Hutchinson, we already talked about, very good. And you know what? The line opposite of Green Bay here, like you have some linebackers who are good in run stop. And you have some good interior guys as well. Aiden Hutchinson, I wrote, could improve in run stop, but that's also not what he's asked to do. Reader, McNeil, Campbell, Anzalone, and everything you have behind you with Branch and Malafanu and even Kirby Joseph to a little bit. It's a pretty good run stop team. So I have a 7 here, I think. Double check.
Okay.
Yep.
So
I'm a 7. I have so many guys at the first and second level that grade out so well at run stop, the overall EPA, the overall just PFF grades for the team, and then what you've added in, what you've added up front. I really like DJ Reader.
Yeah.
It was good. It could get better.
He's on PUP, right? Is he not expected to miss time? I'm guessing he's not.
I don't think so. I had a note on that.
Okay, that's okay. I am a little cooler on the run stop. I agree, it's good. It's better than average if it's the strength of their defense. But actually, when you kind of dig in a little bit more, it was not as good on the high leverage stuff when you really needed them to stop the run, get out, kind of like, just giving you more opportunities to come back in games like that. So little,
I have 50
bit of a ding there, so I'm
50
at
on
6.
Reader.
Okay.
50-50 on Reader. Aleem McNeil missed some time. That's the other issue. Like Pascal missed time, McNeil missed time. Reader's coming in. He had a quad injury late last season, like you mentioned. He should be good to go, but now they're kind of backing off that. There's some reports calling it more like 50-50. Just great numbers across the board for him though. So I'm a 7.
Okay.
Strength.
Let's talk about pass rush because this one's interesting. I'm guessing we're going to disagree a bit here. Where are you for Detroit Lions pass rush?
It is tough because it's almost the same situation you have with the wide receiver room here in Detroit, where you have one guy doing a ton of lifting. Like we said, Hutchinson couldn't have turned out better for where you got him. You were pretty much told you have to pick this guy because Jags are taking the other guy. He turned out great. He had a lot of games where he wasn't getting a ton of help, and he was still getting pressure, still getting sacks, still disrupting. Davenport could be okay. McNeil and Reader, good. Campbell, Anselm, good. Would they have Branch? Some of the other guys in depth at safety, good. So I have this as a 6. And that was hard because basically this is like Hutchinson, and then a little bit of hopefully people can help him.
Yeah. So I have this as a 7. Did you know the Lions led the NFL last year in pressures and pressure rate? They did not lead the NFL in sacks, where they were.
They didn't convert them. That was weird.
So the conversion rate was like wildly low. But they were number 1 in hurry percent, number 1 in hurries, number 2 in quarterback knockdowns, number 1 in quarterback knockdowns, number 2 in quarterback knockdown percent. And you know what they did all of this with? Not even a top 10 blitz rate. So literally they were able to scheme pressure with Aaron Glenn. And I think that's really the strength of their defensive coordinator, is kind of finding innovative ways to scheme pressure. And I think that will expect to continue. So I don't mind having these guys towards the top of the expected pressure, category here. The only pass rushes that I have kind of in the same ballpark as them is the Giants, the Jets, and then I have Dallas as better. So this is a top tier unit for me as far as pass rush goes. Coverage.
Hutch and Reader are good grades, but again, I have Reader possibly not even playing the first week. And there's a little bit of fall off past like Reader and McNeil. Then you're getting into like, what some of your other best pass rushers or linebackers who aren't asked to do it a ton. So past that, like edge guys, Pascal isn't a good grade. He played a good chunk of the season. Jack Campbell didn't help out a lot in this. He's more of a run stopper. It was tough because Hutch is so good, but after that, it does get a little ishy, especially from the edge position.
Yeah. Okay. Here's where the bottom falls out.
2.5.
2.5. Okay. I'm being a little bit more. I'm giving him the 3. Maybe I'm being a little more rose-colored glasses here. I think Carlton Davis is fine. I have
him as Dusty. He's very much penciled in. He's average to slightly below average as an outside corner. And the depth sucks. I don't know. Like, what are you doing with somebody like Arnold? Because Darian Arnold probably starts.
Yeah, he's going to be low. Maybe I'm too high on 3. All right, bumping it down.
No, I don't know. That it's hard once you get to the bottom end. When you get to the bottom end of the range, it gets really subjective.
Yeah, it does. They've already lost Emmanuel Mosley with the torn pec. They have Stephen Gilmore, not Stephon Gilmore. They should reach out to Stephon.
Different guy. Yeah. I'm like, what? Oh, that's a completely different guy.
Yeah, no,
I don't have good
like
I don't have good coverage grades for any of the linebackers. I have Carlton Davis signed at below average. You have a rookie. You have your best player. So here's the problem with your secondary. Your best player is your slot corner, who is supposed to be your safety in Brian Ranch. And that was great that it worked out, but they'd love to use him at safety too. And your second best player is probably your Swiss Army knife safety that comes in here and there, more here and there. I mean, he plays quite a bit, but Malafanu, he's just a Swiss Army knife who starts or plays, lines up all over the field. Okay. And then everybody else grades out pretty poorly or is a rookie.
Amik Robinson?
Amik Robinson.
He's not a name, but he grades out as the best corner for me in this group.
Yeah, he probably starts on the outside. He grades out about average for me. Okay. I'm thinking he would be either depth behind Branch if they decide to keep him at slot corner, or if Branch gets to move back to safety, maybe that's what they want to do with this. Then he goes in. It's Emmanuel Mosley, who started a bunch of times, tore his knee like 3 plays in.
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah.
And his pack is destroyed. Like he could play maybe at the end of the year. They said they had an undrafted rookie. Somebody's mentioning Owazuriki. Yeah, there's a bunch of guys that have a definite possibility to play because of the overall weakness. Owazuriki is, he'll probably rotate in as far as like defensive tackles. Like there's some depth there with him and I think John Kaminsky.
I'm going to stick with 3 for my coverage rating because I actually do think that you kind of have to have a little bit of a upside potential for Enos Rakestraw and Terrion Arnold as rookies. They may take time, but they should be giving you at least replacement level type of stuff, considering their pedigree. And Carlton Davis, I actually still have a decent expectation for him. Amik Robinson, I have a decent number on, and I do like Branch and Kirby. So this isn't going to be as big of a trash fire as it was last year, I don't think. But we'll revisit this after we see.
Kirby.
See what they start the schedule with some mediocre wide receiving groups, and we'll get an idea pretty quick.
Kirby was harder to grade. He's still young. He's drafted in 2022. PFF has him as 85th, third out of 95 safeties. Run defense was okay, but that wasn't what he was asked to do. He was mostly asked to be a coverage guy, and his coverage grade is 50.
Yeah.
The tough part about that is like
tough ones.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. They were up against it a bunch, and it wasn't a good unit. So it's not like his job was terribly easy as playing. It looks like for the most part he lined up mostly about half the time he was a free safety, but he played in the box a quarter of the time. He was a slot corner another quarter of the time. So he was moved around. He was asked to do a bunch of things too. So maybe if he can start to figure it out a little more in his third year here, I'm still very low because I don't have Kirby rated high and I don't have any of the corners rated high. One's a rookie. One of your depth is a rookie. You drafted another safety that probably didn't need. The depth is bad. The youth and the skill level is pretty bad outside of Brian Branch.
Yeah. Whew. Okay. What's your STZ?
Special teams for the Detroit Lions is a 4.
Okay.
Jack Fox is your punter. He's but serviceable. Khalif Raymond's a good punt returner, but man, I don't know if he might be your wide receiver too. If JMO doesn't get you on, I'm not sure you can risk him back there. You have Khalil Dorsey and Craig Reynolds, who's a running back from our favorite college. I can't think of the name of it. It's where Andre Reed went. Somebody has to think of that because it's a fun name out of Pennsylvania. I do have one quick note. Their kicker was bad last year. Badgley's still in the roster, but he had some injuries too. They went and got a kid from the UFL, and I remember this from the beginning of the year. So in the first week of the UFL season, he made a 64-yard game-winning field goal to beat the Battlehawks, the longest field goal in the history of the league. It was the first time he had attempted a field goal in a game. In college, he was a kickoff specialist. He'd attempted one in like high school, apparently, but he'd never actually attempted a field goal, and they just trotted him out there for a 64-yarder because the UFL is fucking unserious. But he made it, and it's funny because it was for the Michigan Panthers, and they played their games right here in Ford Field, where Justin Tucker made his 66-yarder in similar fashion. So Bates is your kicker, for better or worse. That was just a fun fact that I had highlighted. He actually kicked a couple more 60-yarders last year, so he might be okay. It's one of those where he was never asked to be a field goal kicker. He was a kickoff guy at
like
Arkansas.
the next Elliott.
Yeah, it'd be funny if
and just making everything.
Yeah, it would be funny if they just like had a top 5 kicker out of nowhere, because Arkansas and Texas State had kickers, and he was brought in to be the kickoff guy.
Wasn't the Dallas kicker kind of like that too? Brandon Aubrey. He was like
Aubrey out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere, just like, I'm making everything. Yeah.
So that's my player to watch this year. It's my pick to click.
All right. What's your intangible number?
This is tough because this is our Dan Campbell number. How high can you go on here?
11.
Because you're already putting in some for the offensive coordinator. So this is Dan Campbell's motivation / the fact he always played home. I went 8 because it's Dan Campbell, man.
I'm at 8.5.
He's the ultimate in motivation, and it sounded corny, and it was like, oh, this is gonna get old real fast, and it hasn't. And he has the buy-in from this team, and that's a big part of the success. 100%. Great factor.
I'm at 8.5. The only ding pop I can come up. Coots down. It's got to be Coots, right? Cuts.
I think it's Cuts. I think it's Cuts down.
Cuts down.
Andre Reed went there.
Cuts down. Golden Bears. The only ding I can give them is I didn't love some of the adjustments they made defensively in game last year. But otherwise it was 10. They were 10 everywhere else. So 8.5 for me overall.
I think some of it was like I agree with you, but at the same time, I thought about that. But at the same time, I looked at like who was available, especially in the secondary and across.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? Yeah, maybe they argued with that.
Line is like, didn't have who's going to be our other edge rusher? Who's going to really help out here? Who's going to be our boundary corner? Like, we just don't have those people on our team.
Yep.
This sucks because we can't fix it.
Yep. Okay. So the Lions are 66.5 percentile for you, 67th percentile for me. We're both giving them a +6, which clearly puts them in the mix as best team in the NFC right now so far of everyone we've talked about. With Philadelphia, you basically have them a hair under Philly.
Yeah.
I have them a hair over Philly. I'm a hair better than Philly with this group. You're a hair under. And I think so. I guess here's the question, man. Let's look at the schedule and let's figure out if we're betting these guys to win the Super Bowl. And if not, is it because we have questions about their home field advantage? What's the schedule look like, Andy?
It looks like they're going to play 17 games over 18 weeks, and a lot of them, as we said, are going to be indoors.
What? Why didn't anyone tell me this?
The Green Bay game will be outdoors. The Chicago game will be outdoors, and San Francisco will be outdoors. I think that might be it.
That's it.
Because it's home, Dome, Arizona, home, Dome, Dallas, Dome, Minnesota, home. Like we said, Green Bay, at Houston's Dome, Jacksonville's at home, Indy's at Dome, Chicago's at home, Green Bay's at Dome, Buffalo home. And then, the Minnesota game to close things out. A lot of blue on there, but at the same time, we said first place schedule means you are playing some tough teams. You play Houston, you play San Francisco, you do play Buffalo. At least you do have Buffalo at home. San Francisco is in a tough little spot there because it is on the heels of a back-to-back. That is the only time you'll play back-to-back outdoor games. And it's against one of the best teams in your own conference. That might be pretty important for seeding. Yeah. We don't know that for sure, but there's always a possibility that is maybe a play-in game for a bye. And, the motivation there is, if you guys win this, you don't have to play versus Minnesota next week. You guys can take a nice long vacation, we'll throw Charlie Batch in, or whoever the backup quarterback is at this point. I really don't think it's him. Nate Sudfeld, Hendon Hooker, one of those guys, and Lordy, we're going to the promised land. Michigan and Detroit both doing it. Oh boy, what a time to be from the Wolverine State. Week 17.
Is that what they call it?
Implications.
Is it the Wolverine State? Really?
I believe so.
Oh. Here's what I'll tell you, man. There are some spots on here that I very much am keen on going against them as a favorite. Buffalo and Green Bay late in the season stand out in that regard because you have elite quarterbacks against this weakness of this coverage unit. I agree with you that Monday Night Football game week 17 is going to be for a lot of jelly beans of equity in terms of NFC Championship. Because I do think the Lions are going to be in the mix for a playoff, even if they don't, even if the Packers jump them, this team is very much in the mix for an NFC playoff picture, as far as I can tell you. They're much better than some of the other wild card hopefuls. I would also look at we're going to see them a lot in standalone games. What's that? 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 standalone games that the Lions are involved in this year. All of them look good. But you got some clusters of really tough games here. The back-to-back of Green Bay and Houston, the back-to-back of Green Bay and Buffalo. You mentioned the back-to-back on the road that ends with San Francisco. The game that I'm the most interested to bet so far is week 1. That's Sunday Night Football. We kick off with Detroit versus the Rams, which was a phenomenal playoff game last year. And it is currently the highest total on the board at 51. Now, traditionally, Sunday Night Football early in the season is where overs go to die, Andy.
God, remember that Dallas-Tampa game 2 years ago?
This is what was there 9 points scored? I felt like it.
It was hilarious. Hilarious under.
I do not think that either of these defenses are really going to be in good enough shape to make that a reasonably well-defended game. Do you?
It looks like Puka's going to be fine. Apparently, some news came out on that, and yeah, I mean the Rams are going to have to be rebuilt a little after the retirement of a certain Hall of Famer. We'll see how they deal with this running attack / top end wide receiver as well, and Laporta. So yeah, I'm not champing at the bit to bet the over 50 in a game like that because of what we've seen early in the season, where sometimes there's some rust as well on the offensive side. But I'm not betting against that for certain.
Okay, maybe
I like if that Arizona game is anywhere under like 54, that's a dead nut over. That's going to be another pretty bad, just overall defense, but that's going to be another bad secondary with a very much revamped passing attack, and they'll be at home. Maybe they make a little bit of run early. Nothing would be better than Arizona up like 17-7 early. I'd be cashing my tickets at that point.
Yeah, and that might actually set up a nice underspot the next week on Monday Night Football against Seattle. Because Seattle, I don't know if they're. I don't think they're stopping your pass rush, and I don't know that you're going to have as much success against the Mike McDonald defense as we saw last year against Baltimore. So
especially once he's had a month of
couple
Sundays
weeks, to get everything lined up,
get everything looking good.
Yep. At Dallas, Detroit, week 6, dogs, yay or nay?
Now, we talked about Dallas, and I like their coverage unit quite a bit. I like their pass rush, but they don't have a good run stop. That just feels like a Detroit keep the ball away game.
Keep away. I was thinking the exact same thing.
Where that could be a Detroit under kind of correlated. Detroit scores three touchdowns on
Detroit
3
wins
long drives,
23-20 or something. Yeah.
40 minutes of game, 40 minutes of possession. And, if you are able to take away Lamb at all, would they beat you with Zeke? It's kind of a nice matchup for them if they are able to just run the ball well.
Yeah, for sure. Show.
That would be a frustrating game for Micah.
Yeah.
Just banging his head against stud after stud in the front there.
Big boys, yeah. Very cool. Yeah. There's some fun ones here, man. This Lions team is going to be fun to watch this year. I'm very excited. And we get to see Caleb Williams on the morning of Thanksgiving. How about that? Think that'll be a good game?
No.
Because it never is.
No, I mean the Bears' offensive line's improving and the defense has some stuff, but like they, I don't know. I mean, we did talk about the Bears. The pass rush could be pretty bad. Goff moves with impunity anyway back there. He might just be able to pick them apart because it's not going to be a good defense. I have it as a below average defense. Their strength is your coverage, and it's still not even good. So they won't have a great run stop either, I don't believe. So that's probably a pretty decent matchup for. I mean, it's kind of stating the obvious. One of the best teams in the NFC versus one of the worst.
Okay.
I mean, so much depends on just the ascension of Caleb. I hope he's good. I hope that's a fun game.
Okay. Do you worry at all about the, if the Lions have home field advantage, the market overpricing, if they have, if the path to the Super Bowl goes through Detroit and they're your 1 seed, do you worry at all about not having enough of a home field advantage on the turf, considering some of your deficiencies? Right? Like I'm just basically asking, like, are you going to get worthwhile kind of equity in your pocket betting the Lions at, whatever, 13-1 to win the Super Bowl?
Like if your pass rush doesn't improve and it's still just kind of a one-man show with some help in the interior and your secondary doesn't, see some sort of miraculous improvement as well, like I'm not excited about Philly coming into town. Like, oh, 2 top receivers and still another, like, that's just a battle of really good offensive lines. Like, that's a bad matchup taking them indoors. Like, oh, we're going to have our shitty secondary against their 2 stud receivers and a tight end. And, like, is our indoor fast track really helping us that much in that kind of matchup? Whereas they have a good pass rush, which is a bit, that's obviously a bit neutralized, but there's a few teams where I wouldn't be super excited about hosting them because of, it's not like you have this outdoor cold weather, late season home field advantage. Domes do bring their own, obviously with the noise, but there's just so many weird, bad matchups between some of the top teams and them. You really got to go out. I think you really got to figure something out at corner or sign some guys. They should just be signing everybody off the street that doesn't have a job, that thinks they're one of the top 64 cornerbacks in the league, and just seeing, like, hey, can this guy be better? Can this guy help us out at all?
Yeah. Can I interest you in any regular season success prices on the likes of Goff MVP 18-1?
I don't think he'd get all the credit, would he?
No. Hutchinson DPOY 13-1?
I like that because, again, he has shown he can do it without a battery made across from him. And I think he can put up some sick numbers at times. Yeah, I think he had 11.5 last year.
Yeah.
I don't hate him. 13-1's not a bad price.
What does Dan Campbell have to do? They're good.
He's starting to get a little bit of a name.
Okay.
And
he led pressures in the NFL last year.
Yeah, if he converts more, that's just kind of a luck thing. It's almost like we talk about cornerbacks winning defensive awards. So much of it is just like, hey, you got to get lucky with some interceptions and score a couple touchdowns. But converting sacks sometimes, it's skill. Like, it's very much a skill, but you need a couple lucky ones where the cornerback turns the wrong way and right into your arms, and you get credit, even though maybe the pressure credit was like 80-20 on somebody else who drove him into your arms. Because counting stats matter a ton for that shit. We already know he's very good. He's very good in, several phases of the game. I don't think like a big, he improved so much in run stop, that's going to win him the award. It's going to be 18 sacks that's going to win this. So he's live for that.
How about what does Dan Campbell have to do to get Coach of the Year home at 15-1?
The expectations feel awful high already, don't they? I think he missed his window. Has to be a 1 seed.
Has to win 14 games.
Yeah, his expectations are high now, so he has to win I mean, unless 13 is a top seed, but
So you're going to put a line through them?
Probably 14 games. And I think there's better prices for that sort of thing.
Cool. Most wins is 10-1. Yeah.
It's a softest schedule, though.
Back leader Hutchinson is 10-1.
I was going to say that. What about just like his, it's not sexy because it's not a big number, but if I'm taking money, again, let's just say $100 and I want to put $100 in him doing DPOI, I might split that 80-20 and put, or 50, excuse me. I'd do like 50-50 and just say, like, I believe he gets a sack total.
Yeah.
And, and then if he has a good sack here, but somebody outperforms him, you're looking at a wash there, or maybe I'm just doubling my betting them both.
Dan Campbell, first coach fired, 100-1. No. I can't imagine what would have to happen. I mean, scandal-wise for him to be the first coach fired.
I don't think it would be scandal. I think it would be unrelenting violence against somebody. Like he would just snap and like
battery lawsuit.
Break a ref's neck.
Battery. Actually biting someone.
Just hurting someone.
Terry and Arnold, DROY, 15-1.
Opportunities there. He's going to start most likely. He's going to get a bunch of action, but a lot of that comes down to him playing well. And it's tough because the rest of the crew. And now here's the thing about getting opportunity as a corner. And we talked about this with Sauce and how many times he got thrown at last year.
Yeah.
We saw it 2 years ago, so we know he's good. It's been ingrained in us. And then they don't throw at him anymore. And we still remember, it's because he's very good. But to like win it, to get to that first level, they have to throw at you a bunch.
Yeah.
Like they have to be throwing at you a bunch. So sometimes being on the weakest link in a secondary, if you turn out to be good, is actually good for award voting because you have more opportunities, picks, batted balls, defenses, just a highlight pick here or there. So probably live. What was the price?
15-1.
I wish it were a little bigger because the big problem with him is he doesn't play edge rusher.
Well, who's your edge rusher? Dallas Turner and Latu. Is there anybody else that's going to get it?
And their prices suck.
Latu's and Turner's not starting, right?
He'll rotate through. It'll be very similar to the kind of usage I think Carter and Williams. Who am I trying? Anderson got where
Terry Arnold though is going to get 100% of the snaps, right?
We'll see. And that's the thing. He either gets. Say, well, what if he doesn't and he gets 50? Well, then he wasn't winning it anyway because he's not good. Like if he's good, he's getting 80, 90, 100% of the snaps on one of the outside corner spots. So I don't hate that, especially like Turner's going to he's going to be in for 40% of snaps, all of the pass rushing snaps when they need another edge guy. But that price is terrible. Latu's price is terrible. Like those are guys that you can maybe grab later once they start to fit in more. I don't know. Defensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year are very tough.
No disagreement here. Very tough calls. Okay.
If you had to lose Dan Campbell as a coach, us as a football community, because he was arrested for violently assaulting another coach, which coach would you want him to be? Not murder. I want this coach to live. I want some scars and I want some memories. But like, which coach would you want him to beat the ever living shit out of? Doesn't even have to be on the schedule this year. Final question on the Lions.
It's a tough call between somebody who you want to see get their ass kicked and somebody who you want to see like a really good fight, right?
I know who.
Would you rather see like a UFC style fight, or would you rather
who else is there? Because like him fighting Mike McDaniel, that's not fun.
No,
that's terrible.
Nobody wants to see Mike McDaniel hurt.
Any of the West Coast guys, like even Shanny and McVay, like those guys are in good shape, but they're little. Kevin Connolly's little. Like
I'm more like I want to see
Salah.
Salah would be good. Pierce would be good.
Salah feels like a scrapper.
Oh, it would be a full-on UFC fight. I mean,
Andy
Pierce
Reid's
is
old. That
relatively
feels
recently
mean.
in the league. Like he's a good one.
Demeco is probably the answer for a great
Demeco.
fight. Demeco's a great fight. Tomlin's a
It'd be a
little
great
old, but
fight.
I bet Tomlin could still scrap. We're
Yeah,
just naming
Gerard
coaches
Mayo
now.
might still have some.
I have my answer for a guy to just get the shit kicked out of him. Answer.
Cliff Kingsbury.
No, he's not a head coach. I didn't want to count
Okay.
him. It's Sean Payton.
He's
kind of great.
His face, yeah.
He's been grating on me lately, so I'm fine if maybe somebody beat him up really hard. I think a lot of you. Yeah, McDermott was a state wrestling champ. I bet McDermott's a scrapper.
Karma owes Sean Payton for Bountygate still. I know he got suspended and he served.
That's the thing. And his secret family in Dallas. People still don't know much about that. Yeah, who are we missing? We're missing all the new coaches. I don't know if any of those would be sneaky good fight for somebody who's way too old to be doing this sort of thing. I think Jim Harbaugh would be.
Oh yeah,
he'd be a tough one. He's got that old man strength.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that grew up drinking milk and Russian leg wrestling,
drinking milk and beating people up. Yeah, locker room stuffing fives on Peyton. So that's all I have to say about the Detroit Lions. They are currently my fourth best team in the league.
Number 4, huh?
Number 4, Kansas City. Number 1.
Cool.
They're 5th. Never mind. I have San Francisco ahead of them.
Oh yeah, yes. That is a must to start, even in the absence of potentially Brandon Ayuk.
San Francisco, Niners, Niners, Kansas City, kind of 1-2, and then it gets a little messy there with Baltimore, Buffalo, Detroit, Philly, Atlanta. I'm kidding. Some of those other teams that are right there. Even the Rams kind of have a case to sneak into the top 10 at times. Todd Bowles. I don't know. I'd feel bad for that one.
Yeah. How about Dan Campbell versus Dan Quinn for the last Dan standing?
Oh, Last Dan Standing's a good name for a fight. That's up there with Thriller and Manila. That's a good call. That's a good one to end it on, Drew. Appreciate you guys. If you guys are out at Bet Bash, I'll be there tomorrow. Drew will be there Thursday morning. We'll be there for a couple days. I think we're both taking off sometime Saturday, middle of the day. But I'm going to make a point not to hide in the room at all. I'll be out saying hi to anyone who wants to have a beer, anybody who wants to party. We'll do a live show. More on that. We'll tweet some stuff out as we go. And Drew, anything else? Yeah, hit the thumbs up. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your week. Enjoy your month. Enjoy your last month for football.
Yes. Pray for Spain. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plane. We need some gold medals. Running out of time here.